journalistic or an analytic level of the EFF having the most hardcore supporters. Of course, it being a young party, it's not so surprising that that's really not the position that it sits in.
Are South Africans losing trust in the electoral process and in the very institutions of democracy itself? Well, in this clip from an exclusive CRA client webinar, Gabriel Crouse of the IRR gives his assessment of why public confidence in democracy is declining. If you enjoyed this analysis, you might want to check out the full-length webinar that's behind the paywall of the CRA website. If you're not already a client, you can access that webinar through our 30-day free trial, which is linked in the description below. Enjoy.
That is about whether you would be willing to trade off democratic rights in order to get what you want. Some people say that democratic rights, the basic fundamentals are hugely important. That would be the majority, 60%, and that's very good. Majority of roughly 20% who really don't think that these democratic rights are significant, and then another 20% who are in two minds. This gives one a sense that South Africa's electorate is not entirely convinced that the country's constitutional democracy is the best way to secure our future. And we see a movement here, which is really what we want to draw your attention to, rather than just the absolute terms. And this is a serious increase. So those who are very willing to forgo elections, and those who are willing to forgo elections, those numbers have increased from roughly 57% to 66% over the last 15 years. That speaks to the frustrations that I think South Africans feel at the system. It doesn't seem to be working. And so more and more people are moving from thinking, well, if the system's not working, I should vote someone else in, to if the system's not working, we should forgo this process. And those who are unwilling or very unwilling, we see an interesting movement here where the sort of core of those who are very unwilling was shrinking, but then seems to have secured itself. Whereas those who were unwilling, those who were a little bit in two minds about it, I guess, have peeled off largely down into this bucket of being willing to trade off the vote, and some of them back into the top. So I think that anyone who cares about constitutional democracy, anyone who thinks that the country's future is sort of going to be contingent on how seriously it is protected, should remember this graph. It's really quite something to look at.
Enjoying this analysis? Click here to sign up for our 30-day free trial for more content from the CIA.
And here we see a particular manifestation of that increased distrust. This is trust in the Electoral Commission itself as that part of the system that really manages and secures the vote. And again, we see a trend which is almost more alarming. So those who are lacking trust in a serious way have grown from 30% roughly to 60%, roughly speaking, doubling the amount of distrust in the Electoral Commission. Alongside that, we're seeing a decrease in those who have a lot of trust and those who have somewhat trust in the Electoral Commission. And I should say, and the same applies to the last slide, that the numbers do not add up to 100 because there are some that are not sure or refuse to answer the question. Now, why has the Electoral Commission had such erosions in trust? I think that there are various reasons. I think partly it is because of its association with a system that's not working, but partly it's also because the Electoral Commission has sort of blatantly failed to do its duty in various regards. Ballot boxes that have gone missing, electoral venues that have not been secured or that have been taken over. Also, of course, there was the fact that from 2003 until today, the Electoral Commission has overseen every single election has been illegal. The amendment to the Electoral Act said that voters' addresses have to be on the roll. That has never happened for most voters. They were taken to court in 2016 and said, well, let's go ahead. An election can be illegal and still be free and fair if it meets other standards. Those are just a few. More recently, this year, we had a ruling against the electoral commission coming from the SEA, where the commission had tried to intervene in political campaigning. In that particular instance, it said that the DA was not allowed to campaign on the line that Patricia de Lille was fired because she was corrupt. The Electoral Commission said that you can't campaign on that. That's against the rules, and so blocked that. The SCA then said that the Electoral Commission had acted irrationally and had overstepped the mark. That's the most recent example of where the Electoral Commission has sort of been intervening and picking sides in party disputes in ways that I think have further eroded trust in it. Trust in political parties, we're now shifting gears from perceptions of the process to perception of parties themselves, according to, say, Afrobarometer survey. And I think what's interesting is what comes next. Here's the bigger surprise, perhaps, that opposition parties have not only failed to capitalize on the opportunity of increasing distrust in the ruling party, but have actually suffered even worse and are sitting at 24% trust. That being said, there's also an interpretive question here. After all, people are being asked, what is your trust in opposition parties? Now, someone in the EFF or a supporter of the EFF might trust their own party very highly. But when they hear opposition parties, might think of the DA or the Vryheids Front Plus or COPE or the ACDP and might not have trust in them and therefore give a negative answer, and vice versa for any of the parties. So it's not clear how much we can read into this, but on the face of it, it does look like South Africans are just giving up on parties in general, as well as giving up on the IEC as trustworthy, as well as giving up on the vote and other democratic rights as being essential. This starts to build up to a rather alarming conclusion. If I could vote for any, if I could not vote for my preferred party, I would instead vote for. Here we see maybe some room for hope. South Africans seem to have a lot on their minds. They do seem to be shopping around. 30% of ANC voters say if they couldn't vote for the ANC, they'd vote for the EFF. 20% say they'd be prepared to vote for they'd be keen to vote for the DA, and so on down the smaller party numbers, other parties being grouped together as 5%. Now, these numbers are surprising, I think, if one looks at the sort of common representation of the ANC voter as being born ANC, ANC through and through, not going to change one's mind. ANC voters seem to be shopping around, looking at different options to a very serious extent. That is the vast majority, adding up there, about 70% plus. Here we have those who said they would not vote. If they couldn't vote for the ANC, they'd be out. Those who refused to answer, and those who said, we just don't know. Now, I interpret that to be basically the loyalty, the hardcore loyal base, and that's adding up to 30% over there. So just about 30% seeming very loyal and some looking around. I think one way to get on board with my loyalty interpretation is you might think of someone with a romantic life partner being asked, well, if your romantic life partner, heaven forbid, passed away tomorrow, who would you want to be with? If they had an immediate answer, I think that'd be a little bit worrying, especially if the life partner heard. If they said, I don't know, I don't want to answer, I don't even want to think about that, I think that the partner would feel much better off. And so that's really where any political party wants to be, with a very high number on that loyalty side at the bottom. The DA showing similar numbers, 20% looking to the ANC if they can't get the DA, 10% looking to the EFF. And here on the loyalty side, and 10% the Vryheids Front Plus, and here on the loyalty side, we are seeing slightly higher, that is coming in at about 35, 36%, slightly higher than the ANC, although I'm sure the party would, like the ANC, want much more. The EFF, I think, is quite interesting. Lot willing to go back to the ANC. The EFF, of course, born out of the ANC Youth League. Many supporters looking to go back, and a quarter looking to go to the DA. So we're seeing quite high numbers there in thinking things around. And here, less than 20% sitting in the loyalty box. And that, again, I think is surprising, given the sort of public perception at a journalistic or an analytic level of the EFF having the most hardcore supporters. Of course, it being a young party, it's not so surprising that that's really not the position that it sits in. So which party would you vote for this time? I think this is the question that everyone really wants the answer to. It's December 2021, the election's over, and who's won? Everyone wants to know.
If you enjoyed this analysis, you might want to check out the full-length webinar that's available exclusively to CRA clients behind the paywall on our website. If you're not yet a client, you can join us on our 30-day free trial, and through that route, you can gain access to all of our products and services on a free trial basis. My name is David Ansara. This is the CRA. Until next time, take care.